When I was stuck in the early 90s and I thought that the solution to my problem was to find the money so that I could go back to school, I spent 2 years focused on the money. That seemed logical, but it was completely wrong. Here's why it was wrong. I had too small of a goal. I was lowering my goal to my situation in life, and that was an error. It was a big error. Okay. Now it's an error for a lot of reasons, but here's one that's obvious. Okay. First of all, I had the potential to earn money. We all do, but I didn't have the ability. And I didn't know that I didn't have the ability. I just knew circumstantially that I was having a hell of a time trying to find money, right? Like when you sit down and you think to yourself, like literally with a pad and paper, if I'm the best employee ever and I get nickel and dime raises every quarter, how long would it take me to get to X amount of money? You're stuck, right? Your thinking is messed up, all right, but you don't know it. When I changed my attitude, unbeknownst to me, I changed my goal. And unbeknownst to me, the goal became a little bit bigger than myself, because that goal of changing my attitude in the 3 things that I changed touched everybody else. I did not know this. If you'd explained it to me then, I wouldn't have had any idea what you were talking about. When I was looking for the money, it was just about me and my problem. But when I changed my attitude, I changed the goal. In other words, I changed my perception. My perception changed. I was no longer looking for money, and it allowed me to see things that I previously could not see. Now, I want you to write this down. When I change my goal, I will see things that I previously could not see. What happened was that when I changed that, it solved 2 problems instantly, okay? It helped me become aware of another job, because that's all I could do was another job, okay? But the job paid a lot more money. So both problems were solved instantly, within a month. After 2 years of struggling, looking for something that I could not find. It didn't matter how determined I was, couldn't find it. And then 7 years of studying. I'm doing what I can at this job. I'm moving up, moving up, moving up, moving up. Eventually get to the top of the company. Never go back to school. Never make any more money either. That was one of the things. When I got promoted, I was told that originally I would probably start off making less, and they did. They lowered my income from $62,000 to $57,000, and that if it worked out, they would bring me back up to $62,000, but I would probably never make any more than that. And I never made a penny more than that for the rest of the years that I worked for that company. They just had a warped philosophy of everything that they were doing there. Regardless of that, it was allowing me to make just enough money so that we could live in a nice neighborhood, in a very small home, and I had a little bit of money to be able to pursue my studies, right? And I have already told you, everything else that I did was all on credit, okay? Even a second mortgage on the house for 7 years. I had no way of paying forward my education, so I was charging it for 7 years. I never saw a dime more for 7 years. 7 years later, or say 6.5, my goal changed again. And when my goal changed again, it changed my perception again. So I go from working for somebody else and I step into my own business, right? Now, you can say whatever you want about risk. You can say whatever you want about the massive amounts of people that fail at business. When you step from a job into a business, right? If that's what you truly want, all of a sudden you have an opportunity. You have an advantage that you've never had before. What's the advantage? The advantage is you can control your income. Now I want you to think, does that guarantee a big income? No. Does it mean you won't go broke? No. It just means that you now have this ability to be able to control it. So it raises your awareness to the fact, wait a minute, I can actually make money without being on the hook for it, right? For 7 years, I'm spending money that's not mine, and I'm on the hook for every penny because I'm using credit. because I had the potential to make money, but not the ability. The second that I stepped into a different vehicle, which was a business, now I had the potential to make money and part of the ability. The part of the ability that I had was I had a product. Now, that also meant, which I didn't realize how difficult it was going to be in the beginning, that I had to ramp up to become good enough to use those tools. I had to learn sales really fast. I had to increase my own ability to be able to take that product and use it for what it was designed to use for, which is to make money. When you're in business, you have the ability and you have the thing, right? It's like going through a video game where you're on a quest. And if you pass a test, you get another ability. You get another armor or a sword or a pot of gold or something that helps you get to the next level. You're at the next level. You're at the next level. You're in a business. You have the ability to make money. You're in charge of the capability. Nobody else is. You're in charge of the capability. Now let's look at your goal. You have to ask yourself a question. Is my goal big enough for what I actually want to do? The moment that you set a bigger goal, your perception has to align with the goal. In other words, when I set a goal, I'm giving a command to my mind to see the way forward to that goal. In seeing my way forward, now there's a bunch of things. I'm not going to give them to you all today. I'll give them to you over the next couple days. But there's two things I want to point out. One of the things you're going to notice, right? Because what is your mind doing? You've given a command to your mind that said, take me to that goal. So now it has to notice things to take you to the goal. You have to notice things that are going to take you to the goal. If you're not really accomplished at goal setting and goal achieving, which are two very different abilities, so to speak, right? So goal setting is an intellectual exercise. Goal achieving, right, is a physical thing that you're doing, okay? If you've not done that a lot in your life, you will be surprised at what your mind starts seeing. And it's your mind that will start playing tricks on you based on what your experience is. So if you don't understand the rules, you have a tendency to go backwards. I'm going to give you two of those rules. Once you set a bigger goal, you will start seeing friends and foes. Friends and foes. In other words, people that will help you get to the goal and people that can't be part of the goal. That could be team members that you have to fire or that they quit because why? You've changed your perception. In other words, you've changed your internal story about how you're moving through your life. And now you have people in that story that can either help you or hinder you. So one of the problems that happens is that when all of a sudden you wake up one day and you got a foe, somebody's quitting. 5 people are quitting. You have to fire somebody. You're going into your old self and going, oh shit, this is bad. This sucks. When the truth is, it's actually the manifestation of what you said you wanted. You don't know that because nobody ever told you that. So you think, here I am trying to make more money or reach a bigger goal, and half my team is leaving. Or I got to fire these people. I found out that they're not doing a good enough job. That's what you asked for. You asked for the way to get to the goal, but it's only because you created a new goal that you recognize that these people can't go. Now, what does that mean? It means the next step is that you have to grow into the person that adapts to that situation. The foes have to go. They've got to go. Yeah, but there were no foes before. No, there weren't because you didn't have a big enough goal before. Those people were okay for where you were, but they can't get you to where you're going. And that's just 2 of the rules. You have to remember what it is that you're doing. Every goal you set, you're changing the dynamic, the reality, the fabric of your life. And here's something else that you have to know. Part of this journey is that you've got to start separating yourself from the illusion of your past, which is hooked up to what other people will think, if other people leave me, if people don't like me, people will judge me. All of those false realities, okay? They're not part of the new destination. But if you don't separate yourself, you create tremendous stress, tremendous fear. What if people say no? I've got to make more sales. I've got to raise my prices. It's all part of my new goal, whatever it might be. I've got to stand out in front of people. Yes, this is what you've asked for. So now you have to adapt to those individual things that you're experiencing. But part of it is that everything that you were operating on before is a lie. It's an illusion. It was a set of rules designed to keep a certain number of people that decided that they didn't want to play the game of life to see what it is that they want. They just wanted to stay in a nice little bubble so that they didn't get hurt and they didn't take too much risk. So they created a set of rules that allow them to stay in that bubble. But the problem is that they don't know that they're rules. They don't even know that they're operating by those rules. So when you're looking to be safe, when that's the goal, especially if it's an unconscious goal, you're going to be triggered by all kinds of things that make you feel unsafe. This person quit. I got to fire this person. That person might be mad at me. I have family members trying to talk me out of where it is that I'm going. They're operating by a different set of rules. Those rules are structured to keep them safe, and even that's just an illusion. Because they're not safe, they don't know they're not safe, and they don't want to know that they're not safe. They want to live in the illusion. But what you're doing is different. You've already given, when you set the goal, you've given a command to your mind to alter your perception, and your perception begins to change based on the destination that you're going. You're going to perceive more, but you must be very careful that you don't perceive it through the old filter. If you perceive it through the filter of being safe that you were raised with, you're going to see it as a bad thing. You're going to get triggered. You're going to want to run away. You're going to want to procrastinate. You're going to say, not now. It's all going through the old filter. The new filter needs to be everything that I experience is another step toward the manifestation of the goal. Everything. Because what can't go with you will become obvious on this journey, and it's got to go. That's not personal. That doesn't make you unsafe, because you're creating your destiny. You're writing your life as a story the way that you want to experience it. So you have to know this. If you don't know this, you're going to perceive it incorrectly, and you'll either fail or at the least, you'll get stuck. Remember, success will meet you at whatever speed you're willing to grow. It's never the universe that slows you down. It's your own perception that slows you down. Now, let's say you feel you're not growing fast enough. You might want to take a look at your goal. Because if your goal, and this is a radical self-honesty question, okay? If you're looking at your goal, and let's say your goal is just to make more money, okay? You have to ask yourself, what's underneath that? What's really underneath it? Is it coming from a place where you think if you get to this amount of money that you're actually going to be safe and have more certainty in your life? If it is, you're going to stay stuck with the level that you're stuck at because the goal's not big enough. And it's actually designed to do something that will never be a reality. But you're trying to live, you're trying to squeeze into this. So what would be an identification that that's what's going on? That you're stuck, that you're not moving forward, or that what you're looking at in your life mathematically is not working. In other words, I can't make enough calls. I can't charge enough. I can't seem to get to this place. There's something about it that's not working. Well, is that not in your perception? It is. So maybe your perception is off, because if you're trying to get something that is just consistently resisting, then you're setting the goal within the structure of what you don't want and not what you do want. When you set a bigger goal, you get all of it. The ways and the means show up when the goal expands. However, it does need to be a goal that you want, something that you really want. But it's a really good time to do a bit of a self-evaluation if you feel like you're kind of hitting a brick wall and not being able to move against it. There's only two reasons for this. One is that there are opportunities in front of you to get better, and you're not taking advantage of them. You're making excuses and you're staying where you are. Second is that you're not recognizing any opportunities, and you keep beating your head against the wall at that space. It's one of those two things. If you perceive the steps that come in when you change your perception as scary, or you're afraid, or you don't want to do it, you're limited to the change that the goal has brought you. You won't go any further. You have to be able to adapt to whatever your perception sees. So the reason I'm telling you this is that you have to understand the universe gives you everything you need. Everything that shows up every day is another stepstone to the goal that you want. But if you refuse to step up to it, you stop right there. If you see it incorrectly, you stop right there. When things go wrong in the pursuit of the goal, it's the next step. You might not like it. You might be afraid it's going to put you backwards. It might create a big problem. But if you're getting emotionally charged around it, you're not understanding it's the next step. What can go with you and what can't you'll become aware of very quickly as you perceive the goal, as you move in that direction. Now the choice is yours, but nothing that goes wrong is a bad thing. It's identifying what can't be part of your bigger vision.